What's up, Wargamers? Welcome back to World of Wargaming. I'm Isaiah, and today I invite you yet again to pull up a tasty seat. No, that's not right. A comfy seat, a tasty snack, and a delicious beverage. And let me talk at you for a second. Today, I know I'm a little bit late to the ball here. October has been both a rough and busy month for me. But we're going to talk about a slightly spoopy game. So we're talking about Verit Wood, a game of folk horror skirmish. Right? A folk horror skirmish game. Lord, I cannot talk today. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this today. The game is by Mike Crutchett. I hope I said your name right if you see this. If I didn't, I'm sorry. The game came out earlier in 2023, and I remember before it came out seeing pictures of the models and photography that he was working on for the game. I want to say that I remember him posting pictures in the Rangers of Shadow Deep Facebook group, and just thinking, man, that's cool. And then coming to find out that that stuff had been attached to a game, and I was pretty much sold immediately. It's always the first thing that I like to talk about is the art, because that's one of the things that kind of grabs us and helps us get that first dose or that first shot of imagination fuel going when we are getting into a game. Now, there are some drawn images, but they are few and far between. Almost the entire book is this absolutely amazing miniature photography. I mean, just absolutely top shelf photography. Like, this is not because my camera is out of focus. It's because when it was shot, it was done that way. And I mean, there is a little bit of post-editing here to make this guy look ghosty and transparent. But there's so many scenes that are being set. And good miniature photography is just, it's chef's kiss. You know, like, look at this Wendigo looking model right here. I can maybe get in a little bit closer on it, but I mean, when I first saw this, I thought it was a drawing or like a digital painting, but I had to double check and look closer. I was, nope, that's an actual photograph of real models and real terrain that's just beautifully executed and edited, and just everything about the photography of this book. Mike, I don't know if you did the photography or if you sourced that out to somebody, but congratulations, man. It's some of the best and most intriguing and imagination fueling miniature photography that I've ever seen. Like, I put the miniature photography in this book right up there with the miniature photography that's in like the Relic Blade books. It's top shelf. Like, it's an entire world that has been created for this frame, for this still, for this. Not that cameras even really make sounds anymore, but you know what I mean. Like, it's so impressive. So now, in having mentioned Relic Blade, this game kind of falls into that same thing. It's a very, very small handful of models. You play with a 4-model team. It is miniature agnostic, so you can use whatever you want, have. If you want to go buy new stuff, you've been looking for a reason to go buy new stuff, or you've had some bits and bobs that you've been looking to do something with, or maybe you just got some models and you just want to pick up a game and just immediately start playing without having to do any prep work. Here you go. If you've played any of a number of fantasy games or D&D or anything like that, you've probably already got the models that you need to play this game. And that is a huge selling point for me as a gamer who likes to play a lot of games. When all I have to do is pick up a rule set, and then I can just immediately read it and start playing. I don't have to buy or paint models. That is pure beauty right there. That's just pure hobby beauty for me. It does use a D10 system, so you will need a collection assortment of D10s, and if you don't have them, boom, there's an excuse to go buy some new dice. You're welcome. You need mostly forest terrain, which is good because forest terrain is both very cheap and very easy. So it's if you don't already have that stuff, it's very, very simple, easy to get that together. Now, where it does differ from other games that use such small teams is that this does play on a 3x3 as opposed to a 2x2, which is a little bit surprising to me, but it doesn't bother me. I don't think it's a good or bad thing. It's just very different from what I've seen from most games that run such low model count teams, especially if you're playing it solo. It's a big board, but I'm here for it. More space to wander, more twisted folklore, horror-ish. That didn't sound good. There's more space to create and immerse myself in the world, which is a big part of what wargaming, especially solo wargaming, is about. Now, this doesn't have to be solo. You can play this head-to-head, and I think maybe co-op as well. We'll get into that in a minute. So, briefly into the lore, because it's a brief section. Verit Wood is a place. It is a living, breathing place. And at one time, it was not a bad place to be. It was under the protection of a god named Verit. And then 1 year ago, the sound of bells rang across the sky. Shortly thereafter, everything kind of goes to pot. That is where you and your cult of followers find yourself. Next, we plunge into the rules. So the game uses what it describes as an ever-growing dice pool system. So every time you make a roll, you're adding up dice from your model stats, from environmental bonuses, and from other various elements to create your dice pool. And there is no limit to how big that dice pool can be. But when you roll it, you're not like adding all of this together. You're taking the highest result from the pool. So if you roll 2 dice, you don't have as good of a chance of hitting your target number as if you're rolling 10 dice. So the example that they give is that Model A, this will be Model A, that finger, he has a strength stat of 1. And he's attacking Model B, that has a defense stat of 2. So Model A would roll 1d10, and he gets a 5. Model B rolls 2 dice because he has a defense of 2, and he gets a 4 and a 7. So he takes the highest, which is the 7, and then 7 beats 5, so Model B would defend the attack. Next we come to ritual points, which are the resource that your cult uses to enact various rituals. To determine that, you roll a key stat. So depending on your cult follower and god stuff, which is all discussed, you pick all of it in the cult creation section, which we'll talk about that briefly here and more in depth in another video when we're getting a little bit closer to ready to put it on the table. You roll that stat for each of your characters, whatever their pool is. So if they have a strength of 3, so if Model A has strength 3, you roll that, and then you take the highest, and then you do that for every model in your party, in your cult. You then add those highest rolls together, and that is the shared ritual point value that you have for that game. And it should be written down. Make a note of it somewhere. Don't just say, nah, I'm good, I'm going to remember it, because we all know that that is a lie. We are not going to remember it. We are going to forget it as soon as we start thinking or doing something else. So write it down. The game uses a tried and true activation system that I adore, and I believe that I have mentioned how much I adore it in other pieces of content, and that is a randomized activation system. I love it. One, I love it because I honestly think that it helps to speed up the game a little bit, because I don't have to try to decide which model is going to be more advantageous to activate. And when I say random activation, I don't mean that the turn sequence is randomized, like where in bolt action, you draw your random shit, but then you still get to pick which unit you're going to activate. This is randomized in that you have a number of chits in the bag that are numbered like 1, 2, 3, 4 for each of your followers, and you draw one of those from the bag. So you could activate twice in a row. Like, I could draw 2 of mine in a row if I'm playing against somebody else. But the number on the chit is the model that you have to activate with that draw from the bag. And I like that a great deal. It reminds me a little bit of Star Wars Shatterpoint, which I think is a fun game. There's some things that's a topic for another video maybe. If a model's health is reduced to 0, it is taken out of action. And when it is taken out of action, it is removed from the table. So there is no like down and then potentially you can go pick them back up or revive them. But just once they are down and out, they are down and out. And the stats don't tend to run extremely high in the game. So I don't think it's going to be very, very hard for that to happen. When you draw your chit and it tells you which model to activate, you can do 2 points worth of actions. You can do any combination of actions in any order. You just can't do more than 2 points worth. And it gives you a little chart right here where it tells you how much everything costs. So to move is 1, to run is 2, a melee is 1, a range is 1, to pray is 2 action points, and to do a ritual and is 1 action points. And you cannot exceed 2 points worth of actions, or take the same action twice in one round. So you couldn't like move. You would have to do a run action, which is 2. You couldn't. It also means that you can't double swing. You can't attack. It's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but I like it better when it's an economy of just do whatever the heck you want. But I realized too that does leave for a particular type of gamer, that does leave the door open for a lot of unfun shenanigans. So I understand why it's there. The movement in the game is pretty basic. Everything moves 6 inches. I love systems that have universal movement. I love it when everything moves the same, because it makes it's just one less stat, one less thing that I have to remember and keep up with and look or check the card or check the roster sheet or whatever. I like that. Doesn't have to be in a straight line. Move however you want, as long as you don't go over your 6 inches. You can move freely over things that are an inch or shorter. Taller than an inch, you have to try to make a climb, and that is to roll your dex pool. So whatever your dex is, you roll that many dice. You're looking for a target number 5 on at least one of those dice. If you make it, you continue on, no problem. If you fail, you cannot continue the climb, and if you roll a 1, you take 2 damage and you fall prone. While being prone offers some benefits as well as some drawbacks. So while prone, you may not take any actions other than a move at half your movement speed, so 3 inches, or to stand up. If someone attacks you in melee while you are prone, they get an extra strength dice to their pool. Okay, now let's talk about the good stuff. So the good stuff is that if something shoots at you while you are prone, you get an extra dice to your defense pool. And if there happens to be a piece of terrain between your model and the attacking model cannot see you because you are down on the ground behind terrain. You can choose to go prone as well at the end of your movement, whether or not you have more movement remaining. So you don't have to move the full 6. It is up to 6 inches. So you could move 3 inches to behind a piece of terrain if you wanted to, and then drop down prone where something couldn't see you to shoot at you, if you so chose. Now, if you want to move a little bit faster for 2 action point cost, you can run. So running is movement times 1.5, so 9 inches. So if everything moves 6, your run value is 9. Just like with regular movement, I don't know if I mentioned this, but just like with regular movement, it is allowed for you to move through friendly models. It is not allowed for you to move through enemy models. Just so that we're clear on that. You can move through friendlies, cannot move through tangos. Come to melee, which is basically the example that we talked through earlier, talking about the dice pool system. It's the attacker rolls their weapon stat, correct? Their strength. You roll your strength value worth of dice, take the highest. Defender rolls their defense stat worth of dice, takes the highest. If the attacker roll beats the defender roll, then you take your weapon damage and you subtract that from the enemy's health. If a model performs a melee attack while another friendly is also within melee range, you gain a flanking bonus. And the model performs the attack as normal, but gets an extra strength dice. So you could potentially, like if you were to flank a prone model, you would get 2 extra dice to the strength pool. That ever-growing pool. I think it's really interesting. It's not completely brand new to me, the idea of it, but it's been a little while maybe since I played a game that's going to roll this many dice, and I'm excited. Because rolling big handfuls of dice, especially when you don't have to move a whole bunch of models around, is pretty nice. Go to ranged actions, which work the exact same as melee actions for the dice rolling. The only difference there is that you are rolling your dex as opposed to your strength. However, there are some fun things that can happen with ranged combat. First, if the target is obscured at least 50% or more in cover, they get an extra dice to their defense. it is allowed to shoot into a melee exchange. However, if you miss your target, the shot will automatically hit the other person. If there's more than just one extra model, the attacker gets to decide who the shot ends up hitting, but it's going to hit somebody. It's not going to just clatter to the earth. Oh, no, 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 no. Somebody's taking some damage if you shoot into the scrum. So, and ritual actions come next. They cost whatever they cost. There's a list a little bit later in the book of the different rituals that you can do. They cost what they cost. Some of them, the majority of them, are things that require you to spend an action. However, some of them are free actions and some of them are passive, but they still require the ritual point cost to be spent. So if you don't have the ritual points, obviously you cannot perform the ritual. Now, if you find yourself without any ritual points to perform a ritual, you can pray on it. So when you pray on it, you roll 1d10 and you add that number to your ritual point. Now, the downside of that is that while you're praying, you are vulnerable to attacks. So anyone that attacks a praying model or a model that prayed that round with melee or ranged gets an extra dice added to their pool. So plan your prayers, maybe. Next, we come into the section on cults. This is where you're going to be creating your warband. And the very first thing you have to do is choose your deity. Now, I love that there is not a list of deities in this book. It is intended for you to decide the form and the visage and the temperament of this deity that your cult serves. It's on you. And I love that the game puts that kind of agency in my hands and allows me to build myself into this world that is already existing, because that's one of the signs of a great world, in my opinion, is how easily can I not necessarily immerse myself in it, because I can do that pretty easily, but how easily can I incorporate myself into it? How easily can I become a power that has an effect on this world that I'm putting myself into? And I like that the very first part of this puts me in that position of incorporation over immersion. Love that. We then go through picking some traits, equipment, stats, all that stuff we'll go through when we make our cult together, which will be here over the next couple of weeks. Mounts, weapons, the various rituals. You get to pick 4 rituals, and they range from Hardened, which is a passive, which gives you 2 dice to roll when you roll in the injury table instead of 1. And they range from 0 RP up to, I think, 4, 5, 6. There's 8, 10, 11. What's the most expensive? 15, 20. The most expensive is 20 RP. Now, while the book is fairly long, there's not, so far the individual sections have not been long. This is the longest individual section thus far. And this is all rituals. All of that. I know it's paper, but it's from page 21 to page 31. So it's 10 pages of rituals that you can pick from. So there's a lot of customization allowed to you in that section and in that aspect of the creation. And I think that's awesome. We then come into the book's discussion of terrain. And it recommends that you want to cover your 3x3 play area to about 3/4 covered in terrain. And you need mostly forests. So it helps if you have footprints that you can lay out for the various forests and for wooded areas. If you don't, then it recommends you can use a single tree and then count 3 inches around that tree as also forested area. There is simple terrain, which is, open ground, blocking terrain, like line of sight blocking, and then cover terrain. We're all familiar with those terms. If you're not, I apologize. I don't mean to exclude you. Open means you can do whatever you want. Blocking means that you cannot see through it or over it. And cover means that you get an extra D10 into your defense pool when someone takes a shot at you. Then we have special terrain. And this is mostly thematic pieces. that have their own special rule and effect. I'm not going to read through all of them. I will give you a couple of examples. Let's look at Haunted. So this terrain will have a ghost spawned on it. Examples are a hangman's tree or an abandoned house or a graveyard, etc., etc., etc. Also, we have things like Vicious. So any model that performs a melee attack within 3 inches of it adds 1d10 to their strength rolls. We have Ramshackled Terrain, which is if you end your turn touching it, you must roll a dex stat check. And you're looking for a result. If the highest result of the roll is 6 to 10, nothing happens. So you're looking for a 6 or better. And on a 1 to 5, you take 5 damage and are placed prone as the house collapses on you. So fun thematic things that actually seem to have some bearing. Sometimes in games when you have a lot of different terrain things, they don't end up doing a whole lot. It's just extra stuff that you got to keep up with. But for the most part, this seems pretty, or it's if you roll like a 1, or if you roll a 6. Here, there's a little bit more of a chance. There's actually a lot more of a chance. There's a 50-50 chance that something very, very bad could happen to you if you stop your journey around the board there. So I'm excited to see how that pans out. We then come into the creatures section for your AI stuff, which is important for everybody. It's especially important for the solo players, but definitely important for everyone else, is you want to make sure you're doing it right. So you place those after terrain and objectives. They activate the same way as people. They have chits in the bag. The difference is that some of them can and will activate multiple times in the round. They cannot and will not target other AI models. They will only target cultists and summoned models. If anything tells you to move them in a random direction, it's a D10, and then you move in the point that the direction is showing. And then the game has one of my favorite features in lots of games, what he calls the rule of cruel, which means that if you cannot agree or if something is unclear, you take the option that is the most violent or will cause the most chaos. And I approve of that. And then we come into the individual models. Things like forest beasts and imps or something in the woods. Look at this photograph right here. This is gnarly. Look at how freaking cool that is. And then each entry gives you the AI, the behavior for that model. So for example, the forest beast has the scent of blood. He activates once per game round. Whenever a forest beast activates, it'll target the model with the lowest health. If there's a tie, use the rule of cruel to choose its target. Once a target is selected, the forest beast will move up to 6 inches towards that model. And if that movement gets it within base to base, it will perform a melee. Forest beast movement is not affected by difficult terrain. So for whatever AI mob you have, and then it has their stat bar, so you know what their pools are. So we have their strength, dex, intelligence, defense, health, and then their claws and teeth are weapons, which are type M for melee, range, the damage, and then the crit bonus. Now, I'm not exactly sure what constitutes a crit, what would cause that damage, that +1 to occur. I read through and I just can't find it right now. So I will figure that out by the time I hit the table. Next up, we come to what is called the Awakening campaign. So the forest is in chaos as dark cults fight in the service of their gods. Every kill, every relic collected, every horrible deed that is committed imbibes these dark deities with power. And their followers hope that one day their gods will be strong enough to break the seal and walk amongst the forest once again. So the campaign runs over a number of games with 2 or more players. The length of the campaign should be agreed upon by players. However, for shorter length campaigns, the amount of power level needed to win should be 5, and for longer ones, the power needed should be 21. So in the core book here, it gives you 2 base scenarios: relic hunt encounter or a place of power encounter. It gives you the setup, what you need to do to win, and then how to gain your victory points to figure out who won. We then come into the post-encounter injury table, which is pretty standard. Anybody who died or was removed from play has to roll a d10. On a 1, you succumb to your wounds and you're permanently dead. On a 10, you have become hardened from combat and gain 25 favor. And it's a range of bad and good all the way through. It's mostly bad or semi-bad stuff until you get to a 7. Then a 7 to a 9 is just recovery, you're okay. And then on a 10, you become hardened. Then you would explore the forest. And this, I think, is really, really, really cool. So you pick a cultist, and then you draw a card at random from a deck of 52 playing cards. And then you check that card against whatever. So if you draw a 2 or a 3 of any suit, you suffer an injury and roll on the injury table. If you draw a 10, you found a mount while you were searching. If you roll an 8 or a 9, then you get to roll another d10 and you might find oil or poison or mortshroom or incense, like some kind of equipment. It's a super cool means of like exploring the world around. I like that it uses the deck of cards. And then there's separate things for each of the face cards. So there's certain things that if you find the Ace of Diamonds, the Queen of Diamonds, like the Jack of Spades, the Ace of Spades, then there are specific things that happen under those. And I'm not even going to read all of those right now because I don't want to know what they are. I want to hopefully draw them and get to experience that as I'm playing the game. And hopefully it's something that I'm filming and I have what I need to be able to continue it. And then after that, you would spend any favor that you have on equipment or anything else that you want to get to upgrade your crew. That's it for the base book. And then you've got your character sheet. That's it for the base book, but there are several. When I bought this, I picked up, I think there were maybe 3 or 4 extra supplement scenarios that were available for it, and I got them with it. And I think he's released 1 or 2, maybe a couple since then. He is a very active creator. And these give you stuff for a solo campaign or a regular campaign. So this is where a lot of the solo stuff. Now you could take the rules for solo stuff here, though, and 100% apply it to the other 2 scenarios, I would think, I would think you could do a solo relic hunt. I think that would probably work okay. And each of them has a different villain or thing that you're trying to deal with. There's the Trickster, the Utenver. There's Blood and Riddles. Let me see, which ones do I have? I have Blood and Riddles. Yep, the Blood and the Riddles. So that's the 2 different monsters that are there. And then I have the Village and the Hare, which is kind of a weird, dark play on the Easter Bunny kind of thing. It's even called the Egg Hunt Encounter. And I think that's pretty awesome. And then I've got another one in here. That is the Mother and the Dam. Those are the ones that I have. And then with that, you can get a token sheet. I'm actually going to talk to my buddy Mike and see if I can give him this sheet and get him to put these inside of some of those buttons that he has with his button press. And that's the book. So let's talk on a few points. The first of which that I feel is always important to consider is price. And in that department, this game comes in screaming hot. So the game's normal retail is about $10. But the author is consistently running and advertising sales for the game on Wargame, Vault, Drive-Thru RPG, all the one bookshelf locations. So it is not unheard of. You can get it for $6. I want to say I may have even seen it once or twice at a little bit less than $6, but $6.66 is a pretty normal sale price that it goes to. So if $10 is maybe too rich for your blood, just hang around. You'll probably catch it on sale if you're looking. But as rule sets go, that's a fair price for me. Now, albeit, if you don't like playing from a PDF, there is the added cost of having it printed, but that's not too bad. I go a very, very cheap route. You could have it done, obviously, much, much, much nicer if you so chose. But this gets it done for me, and I'm happy with that. And if you like playing from a PDF, then God bless, the world is your absolute just oyster. Next talking point, availability, or not availability, but accessibility. The monster count for the game is fairly low. When it comes to the supplement scenarios, those usually have kind of specific monsters, but again, it's agnostic, so you could use whatever you have. So if you have a depth of fantasy models, not necessarily a huge depth, but depth. If you've got enough to where you can have your 4 for your team, and then 10 to 15 different monsters, you're going to be good to go. So if you've played, if you've played Frostgrave, if you've played Rangers of Shadowdeep, if you've played 5 Leagues from the Borderlands, if you've played Warhammer Underworlds, if you got really into that, or even any of the other GW Warcry, if you got deep into it where you have multiple armies and different things, like there's just a plethora. Or if you've just been looking for a reason to buy that cool random Reaper model that's been on the shelf at your FLGS for the last 2.5 years, and every time you go in the store, you just kind of caress it gently and just think, I want you, but I don't have a reason for you. This could be your reason. This right here, Verit Wood. That could be your reason to finally get that model that you make awkward, make it awkward with every single time. We all have that model or that kit or whatever. It happens. And then the terrain is trees. For the vast majority, it's trees. Maybe 1 or 2 buildings or ruins, which if you don't already have in your collection, are very, very, very easy to make. It's not like this compared to like a cyberpunk game where there's a lot of things that you kind of need there to make that table work. But trees, you can get like 60 trees off Amazon for like $12, $16. Slap them on bases, get some MDF boards or some cardboard or whatever, cut it to shape. There's your footprints. Drop a couple trees on there. And you can fill up a board really, really fast and really, really cheap and effectively that way. And if you want to, you can do it very, very nicely. But it can be done a lot easier than something that requires a lot of like modern terrain or cars or buildings or roads or stuff like that. You just kind of need a grassy type mat, or if you got a teddy bear mat, then I'm immediately jealous because those are the absolute best. Those things look so good. Or if you're like Mr. Crutchett here and you just have an amazing collection of grim, dark, fantasy, folklore-ish terrain, you're going to be good to go. But the point that I'm trying to get to here through all of this talk, and I know I rambled something horribly, sorry, is that the game is very accessible. It's not difficult to get started and get going with it. Very, very, very easy, I would say, to get from rules to table is not that big of a jump, especially if you have any experience in the genre already. So in my opinion, which is humble and specific to me, I think this game is an absolute add to the collection. Whether you play it or just like to collect books and read them, I know there's some of us out there that like to do that, I think this is a good one to pick up. The photography is beautiful. The rule system seems very clean, very concise, very quick to go through, which is nice. It doesn't look like it's something that's going to get bogged down in a lot of bookkeeping, and I am here for that. So that's an easy decision in my opinion. The difficult decision then becomes, what am I going to do for my god and my cult? So if you're already playing Verit Wood, let me know in the comments. Let me know the story of your cult in the comments if you're already playing. If you're not playing and you've got something that you just maybe think is a cool idea, let me know what it is in the comments. I'm not going to take anybody's idea, I promise. I won't do that to you. I'm just looking for a little bit of imagination fuel. Just kind of curious what other people are doing or have done or are planning on doing with that aspect of this game. And then I'm finally going to say thanks so much for stopping by, everybody, hanging out for a little bit. Let me talk at you about Verit Wood, a folk horror skirmish game. I got it right that time by Mike Crutchett. I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day. And as always, I'd like to say a big, huge, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to our patrons who support us and pledge to us over on Patreon. You guys are the absolute best. If you enjoyed the content you saw here today and that's something that you would like to consider doing to help out the channel, go over there, check out the link in the description, check out the Patreon. There's a lot of cool stuff over there, including access to our Discord server, talk to me, hang out with me, talk about our work, what we got going on in the hobby, some shout outs, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out if that's something that you think you would be into. And regardless of whether or not you do that, I want you to know that I am incredibly grateful that you decided to stop by and spend part of your day with me today, rolling dice and pushing toy soldiers around. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, may the dice be ever in your favor.